Disney, a bastion of creativity and innovation, a mesmerizing storyteller whose art few could rival. Or, more lately, the producer of a repeated string of soulless cash grabs. The latest of which being the Snow White remake, featuring some nightmare-inducing CGI dwarves and begging the question, once again, why? I mean, I know why. I just said why. But come on, man. Have you no shame? Have you no artistic integrity? Have you completely lost the motivation to awe and inspire your audience? But that's not really what this video is about. I'm sure I could bash the corpse of Disney Studios for an hour or more, but that's what it would be. Beating up on something that has no life left in it anyway. I'd rather turn my attention to two studios, and one in particular, out of whom I expect better things. Namely, DreamWorks Studios. Once a group of animators who live perpetually in Disney's massive shadow, DreamWorks has proven themselves to be the superior storytellers in the past decade or so, with surprise hits like Puss in Boots, The Last Wish, and the thoroughly excellent How to Train Your Dragon movies. The first of that trilogy is now being remade in live action because apparently whatever disease causes a studio to generate pointless cash grabs is infectious. Now, look, I don't mean to judge a movie before it's been released. The live-action remake of How to Train Your Dragon may, in fact, be quite good. Considering one of the co-creators of the original is directing the film, it probably won't suck, but it simply didn't need to be made. What was missing in the original movie? What could possibly be added to this story? What do we stand to gain from seeing the tale of Hiccup and Toothless in live action? The only legitimate reason I would accept for this movie's existence is if they found an actual living dragon to play Toothless. Otherwise, forget about it. The same goes for Netflix and their utterly unnecessary remake of Avatar: The Last Airbender. The original show may very well be perfect, but its live-action recreation was as bad as the farcical stage play in Ember Island Players. Because, at least in part, it didn't come from a place of genuine innovation, or the desire to create something good, true, and beautiful. The origin of virtually all remakes is simply the desire to make some easy money by rehashing a beloved story in a technically new format. A format that almost always is worse for the story being told. How to Train Your Dragon is, or will be, a solid example of this, as the fantastic variety of the appearance of the dragons will not, I believe, translate well to real life. Or, more realistic looking CGI. But Avatar has got to be the premier case of animation being the far superior medium for a given fictional world. Anyone who watched that embarrassing fart of a movie back in 2010 would tell you that in a heartbeat. Who could have known that a show about totally not magical powers displayed in brilliant colors wouldn't translate super well to the comparatively dull tones and more stringent visual limitations of the real world? One of the great beauties of animation is that it allows for an innumerable number of art styles. The look and feel of Avatar is different from that of How to Train Your Dragon, and both are highly distinct from the Disney Renaissance films, which in turn stand apart from the Pixar movies, which may each have their own style. Animation allows you to more easily emphasize through the visuals that you create various aspects of your characters and world. Honestly, I think the best illustration of this idea is found in video games, which are, by necessity, all animated in one way or another. Games that offer a significant degree of realism in setting, combat, and gameplay, or that are focused on the inner journey of a given character, are often best served by having the most realistic graphics available. But not every game strives to have top-tier facial animations and hair effects, nor should they. A game like Hades, set in the Greek underworld, is far better served by having a more hand-drawn animation style that emphasizes sharp features and contrasting colors. Deep Rock Galactic has horrific graphics if all you cared about was realism, but the developers leaned hard into the low-poly art style beautifully and created one of the most uniquely captivating game worlds I've experienced in recent years. If you were to take those glowing, stinky, bug-infested caverns and turn them and their inhabitants into the more realistic versions of themselves, you would lose 80% of the game's charm before you could say render. Like their interactive counterparts, animated movies and shows simply do not need to be remade with live actors and animation that's better at pretending. Doing so gains you nothing, and most often you lose so much of what made the original into the beloved story that it was and still is. But I get the sense that there's this sentiment among Hollywood and our culture at large that live action is somehow superior to animation, or, Animation that is trying its best to imitate reality is better than animation that is honest about what it is. I don't exactly have a great source for that feeling of mine, other than knowing a few people who just won't watch animated stuff unless it's with their kids, and the very existence of these live-action remakes that seem to say, hey, we know you don't want to watch that dumb kids show, but now you too can see people waterbend and it'll be super grown up. That, if you ask me, is why the Netflix adaptation of Avatar decided to be a little more brutal at times, because it's a live-action show, and as such, is very mature.
I like to play airball and eat banana cakes and goof off with my friends.
Naturally, there is a C.S. Lewis quote for this occasion. Critics who treat adult as a term of approval, instead of as a merely descriptive term, cannot be adult themselves. To be concerned about being grown up, to admire the grown up because it is grown up, to blush at the suspicion of being childish, these things are the marks of childhood and adolescence. When I became a man, I put away childish things, including the fear of childishness and the desire to be very grown up. So to some extent, I suppose the problem lies not so much in the studios as it does in the audiences themselves. I can rightfully call out Disney, DreamWorks, or Netflix for their lack of creativity, but can I really expect them to be better than their consumers? I would like them to be. I do want our culture's artists to be among the very best of us. It would be wonderful if the stories they told challenged, inspired, and changed us for the better. But unfortunately, most so-called creatives these days are just ordinary people. And more importantly, they work under the direction of the almighty dollar, and therefore are directed to give the masses what they clamor for. And people, the majority of whom are adults, tend to favor live action over animation. If you can retell a beloved animated story with live actors and or somewhat realistic looking CGI lions and capture a much larger audience, why wouldn't you? Does such an audience actually exist? Apparently, studios bet on it quite a few times and it has worked out more often than not. So my message isn't really for the studio execs, who love their Bugattis and their comfort blankets of existing IPs. Rather, it's for you. It's for me. Now, I doubt many, if any of you have any aversion whatsoever to animation. This channel was built in no small part on the back of Uncle Iroh and the rest of the characters in Avatar: The Last Airbender. But nonetheless, I want to address this issue. Animation is not just for kids. Kids more easily find favor in it due to various factors such as vibrant colors and the ease of anthropomorphizing a family of Australian healers. But nothing about this art form is inherently immature or beneath the taste of oh-so-mature adults. As I've said before, if you wouldn't watch a given show or movie, I don't think you should let your kids watch it. I mean, you don't have to enjoy it in the same way. Goodness knows you as a parent shouldn't be learning numbers from Count Von Count, but at the very least you should see the value in whatever cartoon your kids are consuming. Tangent aside, something being easier for kids to love does not mean that it is exclusively for them. Animation is merely a tool, an artistic choice made for any number of reasons, and quite often it is the best way to portray a given story and world. These stories do not need to grow up. They are already exactly as mature and sophisticated as they need to be. You are not degrading yourself or being childish if you watch a cartoon or an animated movie. Again, I don't know who needs to hear this, but apparently they exist, otherwise I just don't understand how these remakes keep getting generated. Appealing to the entire family, from toddlers to grandparents, is an incredible feat that few stories can accomplish. Most such movies or shows are animated because children are more easily drawn to the art styles in that genre. We should not disparage the accomplishment of these works of art because of that choice. Kids can't really rationalize themselves past a mental blocker, but adults can. We can realize that our initial rejection of a given story because we think it looks childish is in fact childish. We're supposed to go deeper than that, to examine, investigate, and critically determine the value of a narrative, regardless of how much it visually resembles our own world. And perhaps after watching some adventure animated in brilliant color, full of imagination and impossibilities, we might return to this ordinary world of ours and view it in a new, more imaginative, more hopeful light. And that's all I have for you today. I'm going to be doing some shorter videos focusing on specific scenes, small thoughts that come into my mind as I work on some bigger projects. So, thank you so much for supporting the channel. Please like the video, and I will see you in the next one.